This has got to be one of the most despicable games that I have had in World of Tanks, and of course this tank right here is one of the most despicable tanks in game. Down at tier 5, it is the S35 CA, the bathtub, the hot tub, whatever you want to call it. This thing is disgusting. Why is it disgusting? Well, it's the fact that this tank gets 330 alpha damage, can reload in approximately 8 seconds roughly, and the fact that you can then use this tank to demolish in tier 7 games considering it's tier 5. You can see in the background here we are playing in a tier 7 game, and you're going to see why this thing is just so destructive and why the new player experience is just horrendous in World of Tanks console. It's things like this that just make it so unfair for like 99% of new players to actually be able to do okay, and why Wargaming proceed to never really do anything about it. Now then, what makes this tank, you know, pretty much broken? Well, it's the fact that this thing gets ridiculous view range, which means, you know, 99% of players that start this game, / even players that revisit low tiers, typically don't have an amazing view range, and this is because this tank, I believe, gets somewhere in the region of like 400 meters view range with some of the perks added on. Combine that with the fact that you can reduce the concealment of this tank all the way down to approximately like 200 meters, means that you basically never get spotted in like 99% of scenarios, especially considering the fact that this is a tier 5, and because most players don't even have anywhere near that view range in like pretty much any tank that you'll be coming up against. Even tier 7s don't typically have like super high view range. Now then, what does that mean for a tank that can do 330 alpha damage? Well, the fact is that you can see in the bottom left hand corner of this tank, you can see that we have 330 hit points. Well, yes, this thing is a one-shotting machine, especially if you're playing against lower tier vehicles. Pretty much every single tank that you play against lower tier than you can one-shot. And that means that, you know, when you're reloading in 8 seconds, have very good accuracy for a tank with this high alpha. It's not even like this thing gets a derp gun. And considering you get 220 millimeters of penetration, which can rival that of tier 10 standard rounds, yeah, at tier 5, remember, it's just absolutely disgusting, and that is why you're able to have kind of results where you can rack up like thousands of damage. And I think overall my win rate in this tank is about 90% over the course of about like 90 games or somewhere in there. So it's a ridiculous win rate. Granted, I did play with some platoons when I first started in this tank, but I've been playing solo recently. But the thing is that this thing can just devastate a lot of the lower tiers, and even when you're in these top tier matchups, because of the penetration, you know, you're able to deal with them. Even things like T29s, you can pump full of your 330 alpha, and within a matter of like a minute, you can remove all of their hit points. Now then, one key thing that I want to note though is that yes, you do have a low hit points like we've already suggested, and that is kind of really the biggest negative of this tank. Yeah, I mean, combined in the fact that this isn't a light tank and can go like, you know, hundreds of kilometers an hour. It is fairly slow. I think you're looking at about 35 kilometers an hour roughly as its kind of top speed, which I guess is bad but not that bad. So yeah, there's not really too much to say about it. One thing that I do love about this tank, in terms of just like kind of being blatantly overpowered, is the fact that yeah, the penetration, the alpha damage and stuff can contend you with these tier 7s, and I just feel like when you're in this tank you have almost an innate ability to just basically stomp everyone. And if you want to see like the highest tier, the pinnacle gameplay in this tank, where you're able to pick up pools medals, well, I'll leave a link to a video that we did back in the day. I think it was about last year, it must be over a year ago now, when I managed to have the pools medal in this tank, but that was like when everything goes 100% right. These gameplays are just showcasing what happens in like a normal game in the S35 CA. You can see here we've like fired in front of people and we're not even getting spotted whatsoever. You can see me pulling back just to try and avoid actually getting hit. but you know, pumping out a few shots, you can take the risky shots in this tank since the reload is not like 15 seconds or something like that. But it does allow you to be caught out sometimes, so make sure that you aren't making like silly plays and stuff like that, so just be aware of that. I kind of want to take the latter half of this video and this kind of moment in time in this video to talk about the fact that these tanks are in World of Tanks console. There's loads of them as well. It's not just simply this one. You're looking at things like the Panzer V4. Obviously, that's the most well-known, super overpowered tank, I would guess, out of them all. But this one is definitely like a hidden gem, and one of the ones that I feel like probably doesn't get enough badgering or harassment from players, because you know, you are able to do so much damage in such a short period of time, and also against anyone basically in the game. Even if you're playing up against tier 8s, you wouldn't have a problem actually penning them. You can see here we're just going after this Panther, just chunking down his hit points. You can see in a tier 5, in a tier 7 game, we've picked up 2,500 damage. And you might think, oh, well, this is just one of those games where it goes all right. Well, not particularly. I've had so many games in this tank where you've been able to deal a lot of damage. I think my average damage in the tank is about 1,600 alpha, or 1,600 damage, I should say. And that makes, you know... It's clear that this tank is not a normal tank in the form of being able to really crunch out the numbers. You can see me here. It's come into a position where it's not looking too good. One thing that obviously you can see here, the actual traverse of the tank is not particularly amazing, and so you are left out a little bit like that. This Panther, obviously he can get out of the game, and we remove him just as the kind of final death throw of the S35. You see that we get taken out pretty quickly, but remember, we're a tier 5 in a tier 7 game, and we did, well, just under 3,000 damage. One more shot on that EOC that we managed to hit, but actually he got taken out just like half a second before, would have landed us in 3,000 damage. And yeah, I just think that this is a pretty ridiculous tank. But on screen right now, you can see the defeat. Obviously, we had definitely had the highest alpha definitely had the highest damage within this replay, which was amazing. Down at 91% because of the 5% decrease due to the marks, but we still ended up with 1,013 XP for playing a tier 5 in a tier 7 matchup and almost landing ourselves on the top screen, even though we lost. So, what makes this tank so kind of innately bad for new players and basically World of Tanks console in general is because you get players like me, and they definitely know how to use tanks like this to their own advantage. And albeit, you know, I very rarely play low tiers, I did decide to play this mainly because my friends were grinding through tier 5 and I thought it'd be funny to just be blatantly overpowered than the rest of the players in the game. And it's also a weapon that can actually be used to destroy Panzer V IVs, and so that pretty much sums up the power of the S35 CA. If you can destroy Panzer V IVs, you basically are as overpowered as the Panzer V IV, albeit in some direction. This is the tank that really packs the firepower down at tier 5, and considering this is a French tank destroyer, you would probably not expect that this be so good. You could kind of rival it to that of like the Hellcat 105, I guess, but remember this is a tier lower than the Hellcat 105, and remember Wargaming's pay to win mechanics with the Hellcat 105, yep, they are exactly the same on this tank. You can effectively pay money to get better rounds than you would on any other tank in the game, and that includes the fact that you can pay to get more penetration, and not just a small amount more, you actually get an extra 100 penetration more, leading you to have 220mm of penetration, more than enough, as we talked about in the first replay, to go through pretty much tier 8s, and you can't even meet tier 8s in this game. One thing that I also want to talk about is the fact that not only in this game can you have this kind of better penetration, is that you actually get more damage with your premium rounds, because why would you not get more damage when you're getting better penetration and also better shell velocity? So effectively you get the trifecta of paying to win. So yeah, this tank is a pay silver to win, but not actually pay gold, because yeah, this one you basically has to spend quite a bit of money to make this overpowered, but in all essences, if you're going to play this tank to play it like how it should be and to play it as an overpowered tank, then you're probably going to want to be using it with all of the benefits that you can kind of obtain from having a tank like this. Now then, one thing that you already noticed within this replay is that we've managed to pick up 1800 damage in, what, like 3 minutes? Well, 2.5 minutes to be precise, and considering that this is a tier 5 game and we are actually top tier, not top gear, it's like ridiculous, because most of all, like, tank destroyers probably have like 1000 DPM or like 1500 DPM down at tier 5. This one, no, you have somewhere in the region of about 2500 DPM, because why wouldn't a tier 5 tank destroyer with ridiculous penetration, great shell velocity rounds, and not having to fire HE be able to do 2500 damage per minute? Yeah, Wargaming obviously missed the memo on the S35 CA, which is very unfortunate for like 99% of players, and I would really hope that you kind of notice that this tank is overpowered and why it really shouldn't be in the game. You can see here, coming up against the long bomb, probably not the nicest of tanks to come up against, because you do actually have to hit the cupola of that to pen, but we need to kind of move forward and do something in this game to kind of help out our team, and so that they don't just get crushed by the opponents. Probably one of the things that I always mistake with doing with this tank is actually trying to move forward. Often, like most people say, oh, you should go forward, you shouldn't camp in something like this. Actually, like, I'm not going to lie, if you camp in something like this, your team typically get taken out regardless. And that means that you can pretty much stay in a superior position rather than being somewhere like here where you're having to trade with heavy tanks on a corner. And that means that you basically conserve all your hit points, and also use the vision to basically out-trade everyone, because they can't even see you when you're hitting them point blank. And so yeah, the S35 CA, I feel like it's one of those that is like superior in almost every way to most tanks in the game. You can see here we're just trying to get the T1 Heavy. Unfortunately, we got a little bit unlucky, but remember, tier 5 artillery pieces can miss you for 2/3 of your hit points, because, you know, absolutely fine and balanced the fact that all of these tanks are in the game. Yeah, I absolutely despise it, but nonetheless, we can have to deal with it. We've dealt 2,227 damage within this replay so far, and this is just how powerful these tanks can be. And I want you guys to actually jump down in the comments and let me know of some other low tier, just disgusting tanks that you feel like are just super overpowered, or ones that just shouldn't be in the game whatsoever, since that's primarily what we like doing on the channel, just showcasing some really weird tanks that probably shouldn't be as good as they are, tanks that are just basically weird. The S35 here, we've got to make sure that we're not going too balls deep into the opponents, because it never ends up quite well. So we're going to reverse now. We're going to kind of see what's going to happen. We're going to try and get a shell into this tank destroyer, the long bomb, because he needs to go, otherwise we're going to be caught up. And of course that thing actually has HE rounds and it's not really going to bounce. DW2 on our team decides he's going to take a Superman approach off the cliff. Unfortunately, he can't actually fly like Superman can, and just ends up throwing himself away. A long bomb kind of sat there waiting. Don't know if he's pre-aiming me, so I have to be a little bit careful. We're going to continuously aim. Remember, 220mm of penetration, and there's no problem of going through the front of the long bomb. He, of course, is left on 24 hit points, and ideally I would have liked to have taken him out, because we do have artillery bearing down on us, and considering the fact that the artillery missed us for 2/3 of our health earlier, I'm not particularly thrilled about it. Now then, in this game, 2,500 damage done. We do need to be even more careful. We probably have a heavy tank coming up from behind. We go for the kind of the lucky shot on the long bomb. Unfortunately, we don't actually get lucky ourselves, and so we're just waiting now for the long bomb to kind of come around, or potentially for us to spot this heavy tank. Now, in all intents and purposes, I probably shouldn't have turned around to try and spot him this way, because ultimately that's going to get me spotted and potentially taken out, as well as the fact that this heavy tank could actually be pre-aiming. I've only got 111 hit points left, and so it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to take one hit unless he's firing HE, or of course if he bounces, or if the HE doesn't even pen me. Now then, he's a one shot for me, as with every single other tank left within this replay, and ultimately I'm going to try and just run, because if we can get the distance away then that is ideal. Now I try and turn, and of course, the M41 HMC decides as a tier 5 artillery piece that they're just way too overpowered and removes me from the game. You can't necessarily blame it on the artillery, since I'm playing in a pretty broken tank, but it does showcase once again some of the reasons why the low tier tanks are just disgusting within World of Tanks console, and why they definitely need changes doing to them. But yeah, ultimately let's jump over to the defeat screen, and you can see here, close defeat, didn't quite manage to pick up the win, but we did manage to come second in the game, even though we lost, picking up 2,552 damage, 4 enemies destroyed, and coming second to a tank that did 1/3 of the damage that we did. Bearing in mind, this was a tier 5 game, you can see we picked up a nice decent chunk of XP, and of course we went up on our marks of excellence quite a nice amount as well. And remember, we did lose 30,000 silver in this game, because why wouldn't you want to lose silver when you're playing in a tank like this? Anyway, I hope this video showcased the detrimental effect that some of these low tier vehicles have that Wargaming just flat out refused to do anything about, and I really want to see this tank get nerfed, or at least that Top Gun with the 330 Alpha getting nerfed to the same degree as the other gun, just with higher penetration basically with the premium rounds, as opposed to getting benefits in every single point. But there we go. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Of course, if you want to check out some other videos on the channel, especially those that look at the French tank in its entirety, then you can check out this video on the left hand side of the screen, showcasing the full review of the entire French tech tree. And of course on the right hand side you can see the gameplay and tank reviews playlist, which I really do recommend you actually check out to see different areas where you can go and spot and play and use the different areas of the map to great effect. So check that out if you want to. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I hope you'll join me in one of those. Goodbye.